I believe I'm not the only one in the room who could say, I may not yet be where I want to be. But thank God I am not where I was. And it's just because of the grace and the mercy of God. It's because of the provision and the protection of God. It's because of the foresight, the love and the care of God and God's good, God's intention for me and for each and every one of us. Thank you, God, for being God all by yourself. Help me say thank you to the Temple Ensemble. To our musicians. To Mr. Martin Woods. To Mr. Monte Filon. One night, some time ago, Sylvia and I went to dinner with another couple, and we went to one of my favorite steakhouses. I'm not real big on red meat, but a couple, 2-3 times a year, I like to go and have a good steak. And this particular time, we went to the spot that has, in my book, just had the best steak around. And as we're having dinner and having good conversation, we're done with the appetizers and my main course comes out, and my steak, I generally have it medium well. And on this particular day, it was served, it was dry, and it wasn't right. And I took my fork and I took my knife and I cut a piece and had a piece, and I started to chew on it. And as I would chew on it, I say, man, this is dry. It's not as good as they usually do it. And then somebody said, are you going to send it back? I said, no, I'm not going to send it back. I'll just work with it. And I cut me another piece, and I took it and I put it in my mouth, and I said, they usually make it a lot better than this. I don't understand why they missed it this time. And somebody said, well, what happens if you eat some of the asparagus with it? I said, well, I'll try it. So I cut some asparagus and then cut me another piece of steak and had the asparagus and the steak on my fork, and I took those and put them in my mouth, and I said, it's just not as good as it usually is. And so I spent the whole 12-ounce steak complaining about how poor the steak was. But I had some options. I could have sent the steak back. I could have had them bring me some A1 sauce. But rather than take action, I chose to complain. And so I'm guessing that I'm not the only person in the chapel who chooses to complain rather than take action. And so what we'll be doing for the next few weeks for November is talking about the power of gratitude, but really looking at how it is we can take control of our lives, control of our words, control of our messaging, control of our consciousness, and develop for ourselves by design a life that is free of complaints. Complaining is pervasive. Complaining is ubiquitous. Everybody I know does it. Maybe you know people that's more spiritual than the people I know. In 1992, a study was conducted, and it said that 75% of all complaints and complainers are not intended at directing change of an existing state of affairs, but rather just to express some vent or frustration. And if that was done in 1992, I would submit to you that it can be argued that the day and time in which we live now is a little more cynical than it was then. Nowadays, we can rate and Yelp and complain about anything. If you go on Yelp, there might be a Yelp review about your church. And that, even in of itself, is a complaint. For me, I'm talking about. So what we have an opportunity to do, CUT, is take up a very unique challenge. A gentleman by the name of Will Bowen, who pastors a church, challenged his congregation with taking up this 21-day complaint-free challenge. The challenge involves whenever you or I catch ourselves complaining, we would take this wristband. You'll get your wristband on Harvest Sunday. I want to give you the lay of the land first and then present the challenge to you. But when you complain, you would take the wristband and you would take it from one wrist and just put it on the other wrist. Whenever you find yourself complaining, now with their particular challenge, you only complain if you speak it. So if you think it, it's free. But if you say it, then you move the wristband from one wrist to the other. He suggests that each of us goes through 4 stages in order to develop a competency. And I once heard my teacher say this when I was in teacher training program. The Reverend Dr. Evelyn Boyd said that each of us goes from being unconsciously incompetent to being unconsciously competent. It says that, and he says that we are going from being unconsciously incompetent, then we become consciously incompetent, then we become consciously competent, and then we become unconsciously competent. The way she said it was, she related it to driving a car. Like if you remember the first time you were behind the wheel to drive a car, remember how nervous you were. Remember when you were supposed to hit the turn signal to go left and you didn't hit the turn signal to go left and you actually turned right. She talked about once you start to drive for a little while, you get to the place where you become consciously incompetent when you're driving. That means when the speed limit might be 65, you might be going 45 because you got a little bit of gusto about you, but you're not ready to roll with the big dogs just yet. And then when you become consciously competent, you do things like ride and change the radio station. You can drive and adjust your mirror. And when you become consciously incompetent, or no, when you become unconsciously competent, you do silly stuff like text while you're driving. Right? You got it down so good that you can do something that's silly and dangerous and drive at the same time. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so this challenge is giving us an opportunity to recondition and reformat how it is we live our lives. Because I'm always around folks who complain. But I also recognize that I am the thinker who thinks the thought that attracts the thing. And so during this series, we'll learn what constitutes a complaint, why we complain, what benefits we think we receive from complaining, how complaining is counterproductive to a happy, healthy, prosperous life, how we can get others around us to stop complaining. And let me just give you this caveat, it's not by pointing out to them that they're complaining. That in and of itself constitutes a complaint. And then we'll give you some steps to eliminate this self-sabotaging behavior. Why is this important to us? This is important to us because our mission is to teach you how to live a better life through the renewing of your mind. And I submit to you that just in the few days that I've been doing it consciously aware, I find myself complaining all too often and far more than I ever thought I did. So I'm interested to see what happens with us as we take this journey. When we're talking about complaining, on page 23, for those of you who have your book and for those of you who were not able to get them, if we need to, we will order some more. But when we're talking about complaining on page 24, he gives us, page 23, he gives us a definition, a working definition for what we mean when we say complain. It says that to complain is to express grief, pain, or discontent, such as complaining about the weather. 2, we can complain by making a formal accusation or charge. We can complain when we express grief, pain, or discontent, or we make a formal accusation or charge. But why do we complain? Obviously, we must think that we derive some benefit from complaining. People are interesting in that they only do things that make sense to them. So why do we complain? We complain because complaining gives us the ability to have an emotional release from the stuff that we're feeling. Complaining gives us an opportunity to vent. Now, if you're someone who's listening to someone who complains, I would advise you to guard yourself about what the complainer is dropping in your lap. Sometimes we complain because the emotions that we're feeling, we don't really know what to do with. And so I try to make myself feel better by making you feel the same way I feel. And so I complain about things, hoping that my complaint will ease the emotional discontent that I feel. Why do we complain? We complain in order to reclaim control and influence over other people's perceptions when we are unwilling or unable to directly confront the perceived source of our dissatisfaction. What am I saying? I'm saying you get on my nerves, but rather than tell you, I'm gonna go tell her. I'm saying when I get home, I want my kids to behave a certain way, but rather than telling them how to behave, I go tell their grandmother about what they didn't do. I complain by when I'm in my cubicle at work, I don't want my boss to put another thing on my desk, but rather than say to my boss, I am overwhelmed, I say to my coworkers, he is really a jerk. When we complain to regain control, especially when we're unwilling to confront the source, the perceived source, we are not giving ourselves an opportunity to change the situation. So complaining in this instance is an exercise in futility. This is why we complain. Why do we complain? We complain, this is good, put this in your notes, to solicit attention, sympathy, and understanding from the listener. We complain to solicit attention, sympathy, and understanding from the listener. We're hoping that the listener will see the validity in what we're saying. And I got news for you. In my research, what I found is most people that you complain to agree with you. It doesn't mean that they're believing in you. It just means that they're not going to complain and confront you about what you're dropping in their lap. So when we complain to solicit attention, sympathy, and understanding, Gary Sukoff said what we're doing is manipulating the energy that is invested in our relationship. So when you complain, you are not being straight up. Why do we complain? We complain to influence the attitude, the personality, or the behavior of other people. You ever try to get somebody to do what you wanted them to do, and then they didn't do it? How do you move them to where you want them to be? By getting on their nerves, by pestering them, by complaining until they do something about what you want done. It is interesting and noteworthy that we rarely complain about ourselves. I will say that one more time. It is interesting and noteworthy that while we are given to complaining, we rarely complain about ourselves. If you were a truth student, then you can get with this statement right here if you turn to page 25 in your book. Page 25 in the second paragraph, the second sentence, he says, if you complain, you will receive more to complain about. So the truth student understands that complaining is a way to focus on what it is you really say you don't want. Complaining gives us the ability to attract into our experience more of what it is we're complaining about. Complaining is focusing on what you don't want. Remember, metaphysical Christians, that you have experiences. Your experiences don't have you. And so when you are complaining about the experiences, you're complaining about something that you have the ability to work through, because what's happening with it, you, is the only thing you have power over. Complaining helps us attract more to complain about, but you have to remember that your soul moves you into certain experiences to challenge you to stretch and to grow. So you might be complaining about the very thing that's intended to bless you. Complaining also gives you the ability to get distracted from the purpose that the thing came into your experience. See, if you're not careful, you will spend your time and your energy focusing on the thing that you're complaining about and never getting the blessing out of the reason why it showed up in your life. I believe somewhere in the scriptures it says, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose. So even when adverse experiences come, even when stuff that you do not like comes, even when disappointment comes, even when disagreement comes, it's an opportunity for you to grow and expand out into your God self. But complaining helps you stay in your human self. Complaining is by and large a human activity. The spiritual you has nothing to complain about. The human you has all kind of stuff to complain about. This is why Jesus says, when it comes to the challenge, let your words be just yea, yea, and nay, nay. But humanly, we are invested in our experiences. Humanly, we need people to make us wrong. In the text, he says, many of us are an ouch looking to be hurt. So we need something to complain about to validate why it is we're going through what we're going through. But I got news for you. If you stop complaining and keep moving, you can get out of the situation and you won't have to complain about something that is intended to serve you and bless you for a small period of time. We think there's more value in people supporting our position. But your position is temporary when you understand who you are and whose you are. We get too invested in the way we think it ought to be. You can't change your husband. You can't change your wife. You can't change your kids. You can guide and direct, but the only one you can change and if you become gratified with the useless motion of complaining, you won't bother changing the one who is really the issue. Are you still with me? Complaining helps you to attract more to complain about. Remember that your experiences, the experiences that you're complaining about, are really only a metaphor and a mirror for the consciousness that attracted them. What is it about me that would make me sit in a restaurant for 2.5 hours and eat a piece of meat that I say I don't enjoy? What is it about me that would make me stay in a relationship that I had outgrown? What is it about me that would make me stay on a job that was too small for me? What is it about me that would keep me hanging out with friends that I know don't really like me? What is it about me that would make me fake kick it in spots that I know I have outgrown? But rather than move, I complain. See, because we think complaining is doing something about it. We move our mouths rather than moving our minds. I believe we can be complaint-free. In this one study, they talked about non-instrumental complaints. And they said that these complaints are expressed with no expectation to alter or transform the undesirable state of affairs. Ain't that just too bad? Who would spend their time talking about a thing that they say they don't like, but won't bother to change? There's an African proverb that says, when you see someone with rough skin and you laugh at the skin, be prepared to put some oil on the rough spot. Because just seeing it or just complaining about it is not nearly enough. Are you still with me? Complaining is like choosing to be in a rut. It might allow you to spin your wheels or spin your energy, but it is meant to change absolutely nothing. From our bulletin and on page 26, it says that most complaining is ear pollution that impacts our happiness and well-being. Most complaining is ear pollution that impacts our happiness and well-being. Now watch this, CUT, watch this. Work with me on this, walk with me on this. We teach people how to live better lives through the renewing of their mind. God thought this was so important that he placed the mission in the soul of one who would share it with us. And we would say to the world, you can be better. And when we say better, we mean happy, healthy, and prosperous. So we intend to be better, or we wouldn't show up in a place like this. We intend to be better, or we wouldn't hang out with folk like this. We intend to be better because we know that there is better existing for us. Is that right? But we complain, and the complaints invariably affect our happiness and our well-being. Watch this. When it says that complaining is ear pollution, I'm sure many of you know that pollution is the introduction of some sort of contaminant into a natural environment that causes adverse conditions. What am I saying? I'm saying sometimes the problem you have are not natural to your consciousness as much as they are natural to your complaining. I'm saying that you can take a natural space, you can take a pure space and contaminate it with the way you complain. I'm saying you can take a place that is supposed to uplift people, and when you start complaining and dropping negative seed, that negative seed develops and discontent starts to move in a pure space. I'm saying that you can come into a home that's supposed to be full of love and start talking about how bad your day has been. And before you know it, everybody at the dinner table is trying to go do homework, go on a date, go out for eating, because the discontent of the pollution that the complaint brings sours the space. So it can be a space that's full of love, and one person comes in complaining. This is why Augmendino says you have to be careful about people who cry and complain, because their dis-ease is contagious. Complaining is ear pollution that contaminates the presence with unwanted, impure materials. Even though we don't always see or smell the pollution, it still affects the environment. For those of you who live near an airport or who have worked in factory settings or settings where there was a lot of noise, they either install some kind of protective glass or give you some kind of earplugs because they recognize that the noise pollution is hazardous to your health. How much so? The noise pollution that's coming out of your mouth, not you, I know you spiritual. How is the noise pollution impacting your life, world, and affairs? I know you come to the place where you want to get better, but you've got to be willing to release any pollution so that you can live the life you were created to live. Does that make sense? What this challenge will do is give us an opportunity to be our own Clean Air Act. It's going to give you an opportunity to change the vibration of the spaces that you're in. Because when you stop complaining, what you'll find is that people around you stop complaining. When you stop complaining, what you'll find is that the people that you used to complain with, they don't complain to you as much anymore. When you stop complaining, what you'll find is that issues that used to irritate you, they don't bother you anymore. When you stop complaining, you'll find that things that you found difficult, they're not as hard as they used to be. When you stop complaining, what you'll find is that life flows differently for you, because you're no longer adding the poisonous, toxic energy into your creative capacity. Does that make sense? Before you complain, remember that the mind believes, what the mind believes, the body manifests. Before you complain, remember that what the mind believes, the body manifests. Before you complain about your health, remember that any complaint about you or your health is a negative statement that your body hears. And when I'm talking about your body, I'm just not talking about your physical being. When I'm talking about your body, I'm talking about your life, your world, and your affairs. Your physical body is impacted by the amount that you complain. But listen, do yourself the favor of not complaining about God. Which God am I talking about? I'm talking about the God that looks at you in the mirror when you look at yourself in the morning. Which God am I talking about? I'm talking about the God that made you perfect in every way. Which God am I talking about? I'm talking about the God that is the Alpha and the Omega in your life, world, and affairs. Don't complain about God. Which God am I talking about? I'm talking about the God that woke you up this morning, started you on your way, even though your baby toe was aching. Don't complain about God. Which God am I talking about? I'm talking about the God that knows enough to bring you the right person. All you got to do is change yourself a little bit, and the people around you will start to change. Don't complain about God. Which God am I talking about? I'm talking about the God that healed your body and transformed your mind, that gave you peace that passes all understanding, even in difficult times. Don't complain about God. When you find yourself feeling like you need to complain, remember the last time you were on the front end of an adverse situation. And sure enough, as God is reliable, you came through clear on the other side. Don't complain while you go through the storm. Get yourself an umbrella. Don't complain when stuff gets difficult. Remember that the difficulty comes to help you prove who and what God is. Don't complain, because complaining does not give you the ability to change it. If you're not going to change it, don't complain about it. And if you are going to change it, then get busy moving. Get busy building. Get busy talking. Get busy running. Get busy making good things happen in your life, world, and affairs. But by all means, don't complain about God, because God is love and you are love. So as we enter into this experience, as we enter into this experience, remember that you have an opportunity presented to you. It's an opportunity that will help you be better and not worse. It's an opportunity that will help you align yourself with the truth of your being. It's an opportunity that's here to bless you. And I'm looking forward to the challenge. And I hope you are as well. God bless you.